Who's going to be number 4? Who's that other team that can get into the college football playoff, assuming that 4 Big Ten teams get in, much like they did last season? I think the favorite is Illinois. A lot of people are giving a lot of praise, rightfully so, for Brett Bielema's squad right now. They are oozing experience, and they have a favorable schedule, and that is a chef's kiss type of combination to maybe make their way to the college football playoff. Luke Altmaier is back at quarterback. They've got 4 starters coming back on the offensive line. The entire secondary is back. Xavier Scott, Miles Scott, Matthew Bailey, everybody back. And Aaron Henry, as the defensive coordinator, is really good at developing defensive backs. Like, he was a part of that staff in 2022. Ryan Walters was the defensive coordinator at that point, where you had Devin Witherspoon, where you had Sidney Brown, where you had all those guys kind of flying over the football field and all that. Like, you have Gabe Akis that's going to be coming off the edge from that kind of outside linebacker, defensive end type of spot as well. Like, there's a lot of really good experience, a lot of really good young players on a team that won 9 games in the regular season, losses to Penn State, Oregon, and Minnesota, and then they won that bowl game, of course, over South Carolina. So a 10-3 team making that next jump up, yeah, it's very feasible, obviously, that they could get to that point. I love Illinois. I just love Brett Bielema, the man who was born to do one thing and one thing only, and that's coach Big Ten football. You look at their schedule. No Penn State on the schedule, no Michigan on the schedule, and no Oregon on the schedule. You look at the toughest games for the Illini next season. September 20th, they go to Indiana. They get USC at home the very next week, and then October 11th, they get a home game in the Yellow Buck Trophy game against the Ohio State Buckeyes. Check out this finish to their season. At Washington, home against Rutgers, home against Maryland, at Wisconsin, home against Northwestern. That's certainly a lot of stretch where they could gain a lot of confidence possibly going into a college football playoff berth right now. They play the bottom 4 teams in the Big Ten from last season. Only Duke, Indiana, Rutgers, and Ohio State, that's 4 out of their 12, had 7 or more regular season wins from last season. You know, a lot of times when what needs to happen in order to make a run? You need your roster, certainly fairly in a pretty good spot, but maybe schedule more than anything, especially in these Power 2 schedules in the Big Ten and the SEC, is needed to really make a run. Let's talk about the other I school there in the Midwest. Let's talk about Indiana. I suppose there's Iowa too, but let's talk about the Indiana Hoosiers right now. You know, a lot of people are looking at Indiana. Oh, that was a great story last year. Cignetti taking the team from 3 wins all the way up to 11 wins, and that's great. But they couldn't get it done against the good teams on their schedule. And now Indiana's going to kind of take their seat yet again at the table that they've been occupying for a little bit. With that, I say, in honor of the retiring Lee Corso, not so fast, my friend, because Indiana has a really good roster. This roster in 2025 could certainly have won 11 games in 2024. There's an argument that this roster might be better this year than it was last year. You have some of these guys that are coming back that are they're in the system for a year, and they're going to continue to get better. They're going to continue to learn more, of course, in there as well. But the thing is, they have, at the very least, as good of a roster, but they have a much more difficult schedule this year. So, of course, that is going to get into the way. Like, I look at this team right now offensively. I'm really, really excited. Now, one big loss is co-offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach Tino Sinceri. So that's one thing to watch out for, but they do keep Mike Shanahan in there as their offensive coordinator, which I didn't think they would. I thought he would be a head coach at this point, but hey, good for him for remaining around Bloomington, Indiana. Like Fernando Mendoza, I think he's got a higher starting point than Curtis Rourke did in Bloomington, so I think that's going to be he's going to do really good within this offense. The leading receiver, Elijah Surratt, is back. Omar Cooper, they bring in Tyler Morris from Michigan. They bring in another wide receiver in Mekhi Jackson, who comes over from App State. That was a team that put up a lot of production. Like, they've got another team with a lot of good receivers. They've kind of plugged some holes on the offensive line by getting someone like Pat Coogan from Notre Dame, Zen Mikulski coming over from Ohio State. And then the defense, they've certainly kind of plugged some holes with the transfer portal as well. Like, when I look at Indiana, you know, Indiana's in a position where it's like, okay, great, we won 11 games last year. That's awesome. We want to be able to build on that and keep that success going. But here's the deal. They can't quite recruit at that top 25 level right now, and they have not been recruited. So it's not like you have recruits waiting in the wings to really develop and step up into these roles. They need to utilize the portal is probably their main source for bringing in new talent to fill starting roles, probably for like at least another 2 to 3 years. That's just how roster building is going to go, I think, for Indiana in the future. But, man, their portal class this year is really good. Their portal class last year was really good as well. You take a look at this schedule. Now, in order to be that fourth college football playoff team, you need to split this stretch. You need to go 2-2. Bad news is 3 of these games are on the road. You've got back-to-back weeks in late September. Home against Illinois and at Iowa. And then later on in the season, October 11th, you go to Oregon. November 8th, you go to Penn State. Those are going to be 2 tremendously difficult games. Autzen Stadium, Beaver Stadium, 2 of the hardest environments to play in all of college football. So good luck to Indiana with that. I think if Indiana at 10-2 wants to get back into the playoff, I feel like they need to beat Illinois and Iowa in consecutive weeks. But that's going to be a tall task. That's going to be a tall task. I think both the Illini and the Hawkeyes are going to be pretty good teams, certainly next season. I want to talk about the Michigan Wolverines. Like, there is no doubt Michigan will have better quarterback play this year than they did last year. But just how much further can that quarterback play take them this upcoming season? Michigan is still going to look to smash. Even though they've got Mikey Keene transferring from Fresno State, even though they've got Super Frosh, Bryce Underwood in there, they've got an offensive coordinator, I think that maybe more in the past, Chip Lindsey at North Carolina, that opened up the offense and maybe threw it around a little bit more. This is still a Sharon Moore team. This is still a team that's going to look to be physical. They've got good running, like Justice Haynes transferring from Alabama. You've got Jordan Marshall. We saw him kind of flash in the bowl game there for the Wolverines. Like, they've got really good backs yet again. The big question I have for Michigan is this. Is their offensive line going to give them the ability to just lean on people throughout the game, or throughout the season, I think there are some questions up front on Michigan's offensive line. I think that's going to really determine, is this a team that can get back to the college football playoff, or is this a team that's going to be maybe just on the outside looking in of the college football playoff? Like, you look at their, let me first talk about their defense before I get into their schedule. I really like their front seven. I like their defensive line. I like what they're bringing back at linebacker with Ernest Hausman and Jayshawn Barham in the middle there. Rod Moore's coming off that injury back there at safety. We'll see. The secondary kind of struggled a little bit earlier in the season. We'll see if maybe another year of development gets them on the right track and gets them better. But I think that this is, at the very least, will be a good defense for the Wolverines. Now let's talk about this schedule. I look top to bottom. Only Ohio State feels much more talented than Michigan. And we know Michigan they're in the brains. They're in the brains of the Buckeyes. No question about that. There's lots of 50-50 type games. September 6th at Oklahoma, I think, is going to really determine a lot. Because in theory, you need to get to 10-2. If you lose to Oklahoma, that's a good defense. You got John Mateer transferring in there at quarterback. You lose to Oklahoma early, that puts a lot more pressure on you, certainly throughout the season. September 20th, they go to Nebraska. October 11th, they go to the West Coast to take on USC. October 11th, they play Washington. The rivalry game against Michigan State is on the road this year. So Michigan is going to have to be a team that's going to have to be really good in close games. Now, the good thing about that is the way they played last season. Did they lose some close games? Yes, they lost some close games, but they certainly won some close games. Look at what happened, of course, at the end of the year, how they were able to hang on in that rock fight against Ohio State. You look a little bit earlier on in the season, how they were able to overcome things and be able to beat USC. So this is a team that I think the way they play, I think that they can just make one more play lean on you if that offensive line is certainly in the right spot, and maybe they're a team that can win some of these close games. They're going to need to in order to get to that 10-2 mark to get to the college football playoff. Out of all three of these teams, I feel best about Illinois. Like, if you haven't figured out a trend yet, I feel great about Penn State. I feel great about Illinois because of their experience. I think one thing that we've learned over the past 2 years with the Michigan situation, with the Ohio State situation, is experience really pays off. If you can load up to have an experienced team in a given year, even going back to the last year of the Pac-12 with that Washington team was a fairly experienced team. If you load up for that 1 year, it can certainly pay off. So I think Illinois is maybe that team that certainly leads the race. I could see Michigan certainly sliding into that role, and there's maybe some other teams outside of these three that could possibly fit into that as well.